Chapter 231 Owning a Favor by Hydesgrain. No! Dahlia cried, and Till was unable to hold her back anymore, as Jason from behind suddenly shouted out, "Get out of the way!" With an astronomical amount of mana erupting around him. In his hands, one could see all devices Shane previously gave him in order to protect himself by attacking if necessary, and when the Shadow Walker released his weird ability, Jason sensed that he had to use them, which caused him to start preparing everything beforehand. Now, however, Dahlia was in his way, which was extremely bad, but fortunately enough, she didn't completely lose control over herself and jumped to the side, with 3 black, crude, and unstable manifested sword rays shooting past her, with a strong draft brushing her hair. Wyriel slashed out with his sword, without enhancing himself or the sword with mana, only to notice 3 unstable sword rays preventing him from killing the already dying human in front of him. He was already exhausted and weakened because he couldn't use his inheritance ability often at his current cultivation rank because it was very taxing when Wyriel looked up to figure out who attacked him. Staring into Jason's eyes, a faintly smile emerged on his face as he seemed to think about something for a second before he pulled his sword back. Stepping back, the dark blue sword disappeared, as Wyriel said to Jason in the mysterious and unknown language, "You owe me a favor, Celestia Halfling." Sighing, he mumbled to himself, why does he have to be a Celestia Halfling? Abducting a different halfling wouldn't be as bad as a Celestia. Before he turned around, disregarding everything. Taking a few more steps, the Shadow Walker manifested the familiar 4-meter-tall darkness door in front of him. Jason felt relieved, and even if he wasn't sure if he understood everything correctly or what exactly was going on, he felt obliged to shout out, "Thanks," in human language. This caused the Shadow Walker to turn around before he nodded his head, only to vanish within the darkness door, which dissipated a moment later. After the darkness door vanished, Jason's felt as if his energy was completely drained and his legs gave in, when the whole perilous atmosphere with the humongous amount of mana vanished as if it never existed. However, he was not the only one, because everyone else was exactly the same, while Dahlia forced herself to rush towards Shane. Summoning her dryads, she appeared next to Shane, with tears streaming down her cheeks, as she released her mana in order to heal him, while the dryads did the same. It seemed as if Shane had not a single trace of mana left inside his body, while the spatial seal around his severed arm couldn't be maintained anymore. Jason never saw Dahlia crying or Shane looking being so weak, and seeing this, he slowly began to comprehend what happened a moment ago, with goosebumps covering his whole body. Figuring out that he and the others barely escaped death, he took a few deep breaths, before he hurried to Shane, only to see Dahlia forcing him to stay awake to gulp down multiple potions at once. He was worried about Shane, but there was nothing for him to do, as he asked Dahlia if he could help in any way. Meanwhile, Dahlia already stopped crying and only sobbed lightly after she injected her mana into him in addition to her healing ability, as she noticed that he would survive this. "You bastard!" she shouted at Shane with a weak voice, who could only smile faintly, as Dahlia averted her gaze to Jason. "Please call over Till and ask him if he can help me transport Shane to our hideout. While I use my healing ability, I can't do anything else." Saying so, Jason rushed to Till, who took care of Seren and Max because they looked as if they would die any moment when he turned around. Looking into Jason's eyes, Till was shocked. How can he be fine after witnessing such a shocking fight? It was incomparable to the war zones on the main continents, but still. Freak. Running towards Till, Jason explained everything as he nodded his head, with his wings manifesting on his back. Carefully picking up Shane, the 3 vanished, leaving the 3 youths and Old Drake alone. Old Drake coughed out blood, but other than that he seemed to be fine, which Jason couldn't really understand because his mana core was on the brink of breaking. Is his physique the cause? He wondered, but even if that was the case, he wouldn't lament, because it was a good sign that Old Drake was fine. Looking at his friends Seren and Max, who had problems breathing and taking care of their emotions, he felt weird. Why am I so calm? Shouldn't I be the most shocked among all? He wondered as he saw old Drake approaching the two dead foreign race envoys. Ignoring his peers' problems, Jason followed old Drake, only to hear him mumbling. Do we have to clear after the Shadow Walker? Their master will probably send someone over, huh? Noticing Jason next to him, old Drake was confused, because he thought the three youths would take some time to gather themselves, which was obviously not the case. Jason's eyes gleamed brightly and old Drake wondered who exactly this youth was to act so nonchalantly only a few minutes after the whole city was on the brink of destruction. Looking around, he could only sigh, thinking about the costs to repair everything, as he hoped that the citizens in the underground shelter were fine. Hearing what old Drake said, Jason asked, do we have to face another attack from the Ganassia and Deep Sea Scion race when they send someone over? Right now, instead of bothering about something he could think about later, Jason wanted to know the more important facts first. Pondering for a moment, old Drake shook his head, before he exclaimed calmly, that probably won't happen. They'll most likely only take their envoys' corpses and order someone to answer what exactly happened. However, they should already be aware about that. It wouldn't be beneficial for them to attack us, because it would only hinder their plans to nurture more high-potential superhumans, or whatever they want to do with us. Sighing, he silently added, it might be disgusting, but there is nothing we can change about our current position. Nodding his head, Jason was still unable to get the hang of humanity's current position, when he remembered the foreign races talking about their new toys and lower world. If we are the foreign races' toys and this is a lower world, are we considered their livestock or something similar like that? About the lower world part, is the blue planet I saw a higher world or what? Why is everything so annoying right now? Jason fumed in anger because he was the only one who understood the foreign races and in the end, nobody could help him answering any question, except other races. However, where the hell could he find other races that would answer him willfully, without trying to do anything to him? From the Shadow Walker's words, Jason comprehended that something about him should be special because he called him Celestia Halfling while pronouncing halfling as if it was extremely unique. If he heard correctly, the Shadow Walker also said something about a secret to the other two dead envoys, and thinking that it might be about him, Jason was frustrated because he wanted to know what secret the secret was that they figured out, or if it had something to do with him being labeled a halfling. Trying to recall all kinds of memories in his brain, he had to give up, because he couldn't remember a race called Celestia and even less something about halflings. Chapter 232 Celestia by Hydesgrain. Thinking about the Shadow Walker and him getting called a Celestia bastard and halfling, Jason wondered if what the foreign race said was true or not. In the end, they only spoke in their own language which he could understand, without knowing if what he understood was even right, while all three of them seemed to be curious about the origin of his existence, which caused goosebumps to spread all over his body, only by thinking about it. Ever since he had been born, Jason felt different than his peers, because his senses were extremely refined, which was however obvious because of his blindness, but even after he gained his eyesight, he was always astonished about his achievements. Whether it was his vast memory, his high endurance towards pain, innate combat talent, and even more so his high mana mastery, control, sensitivity, and so on. What am I? Jason suddenly mumbled while biting his lip in frustration, which caused old Drake to turn away from the two foreign race envoys, to look at him as he lifted his eyebrow in confusion. Without knowing what exactly the black-haired youth in front of him meant, he simply said, "You are a good boy, don't forget that." With that being said, old Drake stored the two dead envoys' corpses away, before he called someone on the holographic screen that manifested in front of him. Averting his gaze to Jason once again, he said while smiling lightly, "I have to go, please beat some senses into Little Max and Seren, so they can go and take care of themselves." Looking weirdly at old Drake, Jason couldn't help but smile, with his tension loosening up. He is a really weird one, he thought before turning to Seren and Max who still couldn't get the hang of themselves. Summoning Artemis and Scorpio from his soul world, he ordered them to take care of the two youths, while he tried to collect his senses too. Let's just assume that the Shadow Walker didn't lie. If I'm really a Celestia halfling, even if I don't know what that is, who among my parents is from the Celestia race then? My mother never told me anything about my father, but she had unique eyes and I don't know their ability. The slight trace of fear I perceived from the Shadow Walker as he talked about the Celestia race is definitely not something a human heir could kill just like that. Sighing, Jason didn't know what right or wrong way, as he continued his train of thoughts, even if it was painful to think about his mother. If it's not my mother, is it, my unknown father, then? Was everything about him a lie? About him being in debt and an alcoholic? All of that. But why did Mom lie to me? Couldn't she have stayed with my father then? Or how the hell did they even meet? How could I have even been born? Wait. Is that even important now? Stopping his train of thought, he averted his attention to something else that was more important for him right now. His individual unique characteristics. Thinking about his unique characteristics, Jason could immediately name his special eyes, unique soul world, superior mana aptitude, high memorizing ability, and most likely even combat awareness. From his knowledge, all foreign races had a high combat prowess with a better mana mastery than most humans with only a few exceptions, while they shouldn't have soul bonds, because they have never been seen. But not being able to see something doesn't mean it didn't exist. If I'm really a halfling from a foreign race, are all of my unique traits common in this Celestia race? Jason suddenly began to doubt his own life and uniqueness, and he silently stood inside a 10-meter deep crater, not knowing what to think about. Am I just something commonly found in their race? Nothing special at all. Looking down at himself, he lifted his flat hand, only to slap himself firmly in order to get back to his senses. Slap with mana enveloping his flat hand, he slapped himself firmly, only for Artemis and Scorpio to charge towards him worriedly. Transmitting their confusion, Jason could only smile weirdly, as he said, "I'm fine, it was only a subtle life crisis every youth goes through." He couldn't be sure of that fact, but he just said so in order to reassure his soul bonds, that everything was fine, as he thought about Shane. He will be fine, right? Worrying about his master was normal, but Jason couldn't help but think about his own situation because there was no way for him to help his master at the moment. Taking a few deep breaths, Jason arranged his thoughts. Even if my father were to be a Celestia, my mother had unique eyes, which means that my eyes are most likely a combination of both genetic models, right? If I consider the Celestia race as superior to humans, which is most likely the case, I probably inherited my mother's unique eyes, only for them to be further amplified by the Celestia race genes. This might be far-fetched from Jason, but he had to arrange his thoughts somehow, and without knowing anything about the Celestia race, this was the only way he could think of right off the bat. As such, Jason decided to divide his unique traits into two sections, which he labeled Human and Celestia. I can almost say for sure that my combat awareness and mana aptitude are innately high, which means I most likely inherited them. My high memory and comprehension abilities are probably the same, huh? Well, considering that I refined a sub-area, I can at least partially say that it was my own achievement. Thinking about how to divide his unique traits, Jason started to feel slightly better. Even if the Celestia race was something he never heard before, he always felt weird that almost everything was much easier for him than others. Jason was still unable to completely comprehend or accept that he should be a halfling from another race, but thinking about his extremely large soul world and special eyes, he doubted that there was an easier answer than him being from another race, at least partially. Wait. My soul world. Is my soul world so large because of myself, or because of the assumed Celestia genes? And what about the fortified soul conjunction with my soul bonds? Is the connection to my soul bonds so firm, because of my origin? This Shadow Walker envoy called Wyriel was already extremely strong, and the other envoys said that he was a prodigy from the younger generation. how strong is the Celestia race if even a prodigy at such a high level was scared to do something to me, a presumed halfling? Pondering, Jason couldn't answer the question about his soul world completely, and he decided to take everything about his eyes and soul world as a fusion between his humans and presumed Celestia race genes. Looking into the sky, Jason noticed that it was still early in the morning, when a cold draft brushed past his face, as he thought, we live on a single continent on Argos and the foreign races call the whole planet a lower world, huh? It seems like there are many things for me to see. If I'm half Celestia it doesn't change anything, right? There is still the other half. Even if he continued to think about the Celestia race with their possibility to have a vast soul world that allowed them to contract beasts like him, Jason was right now a normal human around his brethren. There weren't many skyscrapers left standing and many collapsed, and surprisingly the Artisan Tower was still standing firmly. Ordering his soul bonds to attack Seren and Max once again, they seemed to finally gather their senses, as they looked at Jason with remaining traces of fear within them. Both were shocked and Max asked him, "How can you remain so calm? After witnessing the battle of 4 sovereigns, didn't you feel death enveloping every cell in your body?" But Jason just looked at him quietly, before he said somewhat frustrated, about his incapability to fight. "Did your anxiety help you to prevent their fight? In the end, we can't do anything against such powerhouses, even if we wanted to. How beneficial was being afraid to you?" Mumbling he added, "Furthermore, I doubt that the foreign races were normal sovereign ranked beings, at least the Shadow Walker, which caused the 2 youths to halt their moves." Sighing, Jason dragged them on their feet, because he didn't want to waste more time standing within the battlefield that was filled with hundreds of craters and fissures, as he asked himself something that was not even remotely close to his previous topic. Looking at the 2 big family heirs, he said, "Will the government repair everything fast enough to prevent their citizens from migrating to other cities?" Seren thought Jason might ask something different about the foreign races or something else, but asking about the time required to repair Syro City. What was wrong with Jason? Did his brain malfunction witnessing the devastating fight? This caused him to laugh out, as he looked at Jason bewildered. "You are really differently built than we. How can you bother thinking about something like this after you witnessed powerhouses fighting against each other? It would make more sense if you asked more about the foreign races that appeared, or something similar. Who except you would think about the time required to repair Syro City? It's not even that this is the most important to do right now." Hearing this, Jason felt extremely stupid, as he scratched his head before he remembered the underground shelter being pierced. "The flays!" he shouted out, as he gripped Seren's shoulders firmly. "Where is the entrance for the underground shelter?" Chapter 233 Don't Go by Hydesgrain. Searching for the entrance of the underground shelter, Jason could already see a small number of humans with a higher mana core rank leaving it, as he activated his mana eyes to search for the flay's mana fluctuations. Jason spent months with them and he was clearly aware how their mana fluctuations looked like. His 2 soul bonds were already back inside his soul world in order to prevent anyone from misunderstanding the beast's appearance, which might create a sudden attack that would kill them. Time passed slowly and he was still unable to find the 4 flays, which increased his anxiety further as he already was extremely nervous thanks to Shane's injury. Jason was still unsure what he should think about the appearance of the 3 foreign race convoys, but it definitely changed his whole life due to multiple reasons. Not only did he found out that he might be a halfling from another race, but Shane was also forced to reveal himself, which would force his masters to flee once again. This was what he couldn't really comprehend because, except for him and Dahlia, only 4 others saw him, which was not a large number. Do they really have to flee, only because of that? He wondered, but thinking that the Drake family patriarch would most likely demand a report about what happened, Jason began to slowly comprehend how significant it was for Shane and Dahlia to leave Asterix. In the end, old Drake and Till can't possibly disguise everything. This means that the chance of Shane and Dahlia being discovered on Asterix is exponentially rising. They really have to go soon, huh? However, Right now, Jason couldn't complain about this in his mind, when he perceived multiple familiar mana fluctuations, as he exerted his weightless step technique to charge towards the Flays who emerged out of the underground shelter entrance. Malia's appearance was still haggard, but she gained some weight and looked much better than before, and Jason smiled brightly when he appeared in front of the family of 4. Gabriella and Mark noticed someone charging at them at first, and seeing familiar golden eyes with pitch black hair, their sour mood immediately brightened up. Being underground for multiple days was extremely exhausting and taxing to them mentally, even more so when the underground shelter shook violently with dozens of highly compressed shadow needles piercing through it. This caused a mass panic, and it was still unknown how many humans had been overrun, which increased the panic further. It was as if everyone went insane, with everyone at a higher mana core rank, trying to calm down the whole situation, which was partially successful. With holes piercing the underground shelter walls and runes, the mana isolation runes were damaged, which caused the eerie and perilous mana of multiple sources intertwined with killing intent to infiltrate the shelter. This was definitely not something good, and several thousand weak-willed citizens with a low mana core rank collapsed on the ground. In the end, it was unknown how many humans died, but a few facts were sure. Each and every human within the underground shelter began to understand what exactly desperation was and the sensation of being pitifully weak. They relied on being protected, but now, even the most powerful defenses, the capital of Asterix possessed, were completely useless against the beings that attacked them. The Flays were extremely worried about their own life, but also about Jason, who was on the surface, facing the erupting mana and killing intent head-on, and not like them, only passively. Finally, when they were allowed to leave the underground shelter, they noticed how wrecked the city looked, which caused them to wonder if it was even secure to remain here. Jason himself was also extremely confused that Syro City looked like someone played with the whole city, because there were only a bunch of large buildings left standing firmly on the ground, while smaller building complexes had it slightly better. The envoys didn't even focus on attacking the city, and it already looks like this. Seeing this, Jason could only sigh deeply, but instead of being dissatisfied, he was happy that the Flays were fine, as everyone rushed towards him, giving him a firm hug. Even Mark, who looked emotionless to Jason, hugged him, while Gabriella began to sob lightly, mumbling, "I'm glad that you're fine." Jason smiled brightly, even if it was uncomfortable to be firmly hugged by 2 Magus ranks who didn't reduce their strength by much, almost breaking his bones, as he groaned in pain. Noticing the situation, Mark and Gabriella let go, while Greg and Malia didn't distance themselves from him, which looked weird from the other citizens' perspectives. Jason was already 1.75 meter tall, which was above average, but Greg was still taller and much bulkier than him, while Malia's haggard and small physique seemed to squeeze Jason completely out. "Can't they be more gentle?" Jason lamented, as he barely voiced out an, "I need some space please," which caused Greg to let go of him, while Malia only reluctantly loosened her grip around Jason. Taking a deep breath, the 5 of them noticed that they barely left the entrance of the underground shelter, disrupting a smooth flow of humans. As such, they began to walk through the demolished city, with slow steps, as everyone explained what exactly happened over the last few weeks, because Jason was curious about that and it would distract him from other thoughts. Malia already explained her side of the story, shocking the other 3 Flays, and they also felt angry and anxious about Jason. But in the end, he was fine, which was everything that counted. 2 hours passed and it was almost lunchtime when he finished explaining what exactly happened within the 4-star rift. After that, he was questioning why he didn't enter the underground shelter, which Jason answered mostly honestly. "I was with my homeroom teacher and the mysterious beast creator I already told you about. It was relative secure there, and as everyone can see, I'm healthy and energetic, haha." In the end, he didn't lie, even if he had to leave out a few things. Suddenly, he remembered that he had to leave the Flays soon, even if he wasn't sure when exactly it would be. Pondering if he should tell them now or not, Jason figured out that if he wouldn't tell them now, that he would most likely drag it on until the day of his departure. "I don't know how I should put this now, but the mysterious beast creator wants to be my master. However, he won't remain on Asterix. No. Malia suddenly shouted almost immediately after she heard the first words, clutching on his clothes, forcing him to halt his steps, which caused Gabriella and Mark to look at her weirdly. Has he already seduced my princess? Mark asked himself, glaring at Jason, who looked even more confused than the other. You can't go, she firmly said, when Greg loosened her grip gently, as he looked at Jason seriously. Are you sure about following this beast creator? Can you trust him? If not, just stay here or search for other opportunities. It shouldn't be that hard with your talent, even if I don't like telling you this. You are a prodigy. If you're not sure that you can fully trust this mysterious beast creator, don't be fooled. Looking into Greg's eyes, Jason was shocked. Behind the seriousness, he perceived that his friend was fighting with himself. Jason himself felt as if someone tightened his throat because he couldn't say anything at all, with Greg and Malia looking at him like this, because they were his first true friends. I really have to leave them, huh? He wondered as a single tear poured down his cheeks. Suddenly Mark interrupted them, as he said, Hey, you three. Don't be so melancholic, Jason is still here, or am I wrong? Turning to Jason, he continued, you can still decide later, just know that all of us will always be a part of your life. Gabriella and I met many wonderful people, and in the end, we also had to part ways because everyone's path is different. It might be painful, but leaving Asterix for some time doesn't mean the contact between the three of you is severed. You can always call or message each other in your free time. Just weigh the advantages and disadvantages you'll have to face if you leave with this mysterious beast creator and then decide. Don't let others manipulate your own decision. Jason felt sudden warmth around his heart, because everyone was worried about him, like a real family. As Gabriella said, we will always be there for you, but I hope you can at least stay with us a little bit longer. It would become extremely quiet without you there. Chapter 234 Leaving by Hydesgrain. Jason felt comfortable around the Flays, but in the end, he knew that remaining next to them for his whole life was not what he wanted. It would hinder his own progress and, in the end, it might even endanger them. Since he heard the Shadow Walker talking about him like he was a treasure, Jason felt that he couldn't remain with the Flays, and using the mysterious beast creator as his excuse was the best idea that jumped into his mind. Am I also using Shane and Dahlia as an excuse for myself? He wondered, and thinking about it, Jason figured out that it was partially true. Without knowing what dangers his presumed existence as a halfling could bring, Jason didn't want to drag the Flays, who were extremely weak compared to the foreign races, into his business. I should also explain my situation to Dahlia and Shane and let them decide if they want to face the possible dangers with me or if they want to search for someone else to help them to drag humanity out of their imprisonment on Canir. Lying to them won't help any of us, even if I don't know how they might react. Sighing, Jason felt extremely uncomfortable about the possible outcome with his master's talk he had to conduct, better sooner than later. Spending time with the Flays, the five of them quietly walked through the destroyed city towards their house, only to notice a large hole in their backyard. The small house was still standing firmly, which caused everyone to be elevated, as they went inside to make something to eat as if nothing happened. With the live news about Syro City opened on a holographic screen, everyone sat around the table, careful listening, while eating. Gabriella picked out high-grade beast meat with much nutrition in it because she heard that Jason ate several dozen dishes during each break inside the 4-star rift, which caused her to chuckle lightly, as she was reminded when Malia told her this. Every one of them had high nutrition demand, but she never thought that Jason wouldn't know about this somewhat unique feature from the Heaven's Hell Technique's 3rd level. She was always astonished about his wide knowledge, however, this caused her to be even more astonished about him not knowing something so simple. Furthermore, making such a trivial mistake like purchasing a huge bulk of low nutrition dishes was something she expected from a fool and not from Jason. I always forget that he is only 14 years old, huh? She thought inwardly, and it was obvious that the black-haired youth in front of her didn't know everything, which would be extremely weird. After eating the high-quality meat, Jason felt as if he ascended into heaven because he never ate something so delicious. Savoring the taste, he already felt full after 2 servings, which caused him to grin widely. I definitely have to purchase high-nutrition meat. If I eat these low-nutrition dishes ever again, I'll have to vomit for several days if not worse. With a small smile blossoming, the Flays also felt satisfied with what they saw. However, everyone's smile froze, hearing about Syro City's damages, how many citizens were now homeless, and the predicted number of casualties from the live broadcast. Around 20 million citizens turned homeless, and the citizens were dissatisfied with how the government handled the situation, while they also lamented about the taxes they paid them for several years, without caring about the dangers they escaped, and Jason felt immediately angered. F-seeking idiot, he mumbled, which caused Gabriella to look at him weirdly. She was aware that most citizens over-exaggerated the situation, but they lost their home, which allowed them to be enraged, at least to a certain degree. Mark also noticed Jason's quiet exclamation and said, "You have to consider that most citizens have been protected for their whole life, and for them, it looks like the government is at fault for the last 2 accidents, which includes the Goblin Siege. They don't care that the government couldn't act better, and if the underground shelter didn't exist, these 20 million citizens would not only be homeless but also dead by now. They don't care how expensive the construction of such a shelter is because they only see their taxes being taken away. In the end, they never faced any real threats head-on, which is most likely the biggest issue humanity has to change somehow. Without each and every human knowing how dangerous the Argos really is, there will always be some imperious ones, thinking that they can demand whatever they want. Somehow, it seems as if the government is too generous in this aspect, while it neglects other important ones, which is definitely stupid." Hearing what Mark said, Jason didn't know how to feel. From the experience he gained over the last few months, which started with his journeys through the Wild Zones, the 2 Beast Tides, his adventurous expedition through the 4-star Rift, and the foreign race arrival a few hours ago, Jason matured a lot. At least that was what he thought. This also allowed Jason to think much clearer about the current situation. On one side, the weak humans were not only selfish but also weak, even though their physique and mana core rank was much higher than most youths, which would prevent many perilous situations if they started to practice combat techniques. Jiro City's accident, for example, wouldn't have killed more than 1 million citizens, but definitely less than 100,000 if every citizen had been proficient in fighting against beasts. Sighing deeply, Mark's last sentence created a mark in Jason's heart. "Too generous and neglecting, huh?" Jason said while thinking about his late mother. "Why did you leave me here alone? This whole sh*t that currently happens to me is too much for me to comprehend. Not only am I presumed to be a halfling, but humanity is also full of shitty individuals. Is the Celestia race's personality better or even worse? Is worse even possible?" He wondered, frustrated. After everyone finished their meal, he fed Artemis a high liquefied magical ranked mana core. She jumped up in joy, before vanishing in the pure white magic circle that brought her into the soul world. Scorpio ate almost everything, and Jason took out poisoned meat, which Scorpio seemed to love eating in order to comprehend more about the composition of all kinds of poison. The poisoned meat was not only full of poison but also high in nutrition and mana, which was everything Scorpio needed to increase his strength. In the end, his expenses were extremely high, but it was more than fine to Jason, who also earned a lot by feeding his soul bonds with expensive food. It strengthened them and accelerated their maturity process, which would in return amplify his strength even further, due to his high soul world amplification. Furthermore, there was the fortified soul conjunction that saved his life multiple times. Furthermore, he wanted his soul bonds to feel good, and if better food could bring them happiness, why not? It was already afternoon and Jason finished his Heaven's Hell practice to calm himself down. He decided to go to his master's hideout in order to figure out how Shane felt and when exactly they wanted to leave. Jason couldn't call any shuttles right now, and sighing deeply, he ordered Artemis to enter his mana core to amplify his strength to his current limit, which was the peak of the first expert rank, as he exerted the weightless steps technique to charge towards the school. Taking a few shortcuts, Jason appeared in front of the school gates slightly more than 90 minutes later, and taking a deep breath, he continued his short trip towards the lake within the forest. Upon arriving, Jason wondered how he should enter it, as his mana eyes perceived a thick hole within the dome's protection rune, damaging it, while water streamed into his master's hideous. Enveloping himself with a mana membrane, he jumped into the lake, and diving down, he squeezed himself through the hole that was most likely created by the Shadow Walker's shadow spears. Entering the dome, he noticed that the water within the dome was flushed out after some time, which made him slightly curious about the runes or technology used to do something like that, as he perceived Shane's weak mana fluctuations. Rushing into the small hut, he pushed open the wooden door, only to see Dahlia taking care of Shane's arm that was previously severed. His eyes widened and Jason noticed that Shane's arm was already reattached to him. Staring at him with a weak and almost lifeless gaze, Shane said, "Jason, is that you? Sorry, I can't really see anything right now, Shane. You are not allowed to talk. Let me." Dahlia interrupted Shane mercilessly, before she turned to Jason with a weak smile, clearly showing her exhaustion. "Hello Jason, you're earlier than I thought. I hope the flays are fine, but I guess they are, right?" As for Shane, his senses are suppressed in order to let his body recuperate the severed bones, flesh, veins, and arteries. He probably won't be able to stay awake for long. Staring straight into Jason's eyes, she continued, "It's good that you're already here, otherwise, Shane wouldn't be able to see you for some time. Because you're already here, we should talk about our future steps, don't you think so? I think you already heard us talking about leaving Asterix before the envoys arrived, am I right?" Nodding his head, Jason returned her gaze, as he gathered all his courage to hesitantly say, "Yes, I heard about all of that, but I also have to say something important to both of you." Chapter 235 Decision by Hydesgrain. Jason looked at his masters, who returned his gaze as both sides waited for the other part to say something. Shane and Dahlia were unaware of what Jason wanted to say while he wanted to wait for his masters to tell them what they wanted to do. The whole situation turned awkward with nobody saying something, as Dahlia said, "Jason, you can start. You said you have something important to tell both of us. If we start talking, Shane might already sleep once we finish. Go on." Supporting him with an encouraging smile and hand sign, Jason took a deep breath, as he said straightforwardly without holding anything back. "To be completely honest, I could roughly understand what the foreign races talked about. When the envoys arrived, my whole body felt as if it would burst apart, while my soul whirled and my eyes itched and trembled violently. In the end, it was better for him to take one step at a time, and he looked towards Dahlia and Shane, who remained silent, without a single change in their expression, as if they knew that he wanted to continue. When the Shadow Walker envoy called out Shane, he stopped in his track for a second, right? After that he said something and scanned through all of us, "Can you two remember that?" Nodding their head, Dahlia became suddenly anxious, while Shane's exhaustion subsided as if he had to hear what Jason was going to say. Taking 2 deep breaths to calm himself down, he announced, "The Shadow Walker said that there is a bastard from the Celestia race, and afterward all of them inspected me extremely carefully as if I was made out of porcelain or glass. They also continued to gaze at me weirdly, and right now I don't know what is going on." The room they were inside was suddenly eerie silent, and Jason couldn't even look at Shane and Dahlia, because he didn't know what to do. Was it the right thing to tell them everything? Jason wondered, but reassuring himself, he was sure that telling someone would ease the tension building up within him. Furthermore, there was the possibility of the Shadow Walkers returning in order to search for him, while other races could also figure out his presumed origin, even if he could still not completely accept that he was not a full-fledged human. However, in the end, Jason told himself, that he was Jason Stella and nobody else. What should his race matter? If Shane and Dahlia were to push him away and reject him as their disciple for such a thing, Jason could only accept it. Suddenly he heard someone approaching him and Jason looked up, only to see Dahlia smiling at him, as she ruffled his hair gently. So you want to tell us that you think you're the halfling? With you here, there are always new surprises, huh? Don't be so tensed up, you are still the same Jason we know, or not? Hearing what Dahlia said, Jason felt touched and he immediately nodded his head vigorously, as his eyes turned slightly red. He didn't want to cry and prevented the worst-case scenario, as Shane faintly said. You're a good boy, don't let this thing hinder your path. I can't say much for now, but you are one of the most honest, caring, and diligent youth I ever saw. In the end, our origin doesn't matter, what matters is what we do with it. Don't create a hindrance for yourself by thinking too complex and give your best. Finishing his speech, Shane's eyes trembled and Dahlia said, "Just sleep, Shane. I'll take care of the rest." Smiling, she also added, "It won't be the last time you'll see him. It will just take some time." Hearing Dahlia saying so, Shane smiled lightly, before saying, "See you soon, Jason." Before closing his eyes to recuperate from his severe injury. Jason and Dahlia left the small room in order to give Shane some peace, as Dahlia curiously asked, "Can you explain to me what exactly happened, when the envoys from the foreign races arrived? So you can understand them somehow. Just like that. What exactly did they say?" Astonished about Dahlia's calmness when she just found out that he could be from another race, at least half, Jason smiled lightly. "Is that their experience with surprising news, or am I the weird one?" He began to wonder before he started to explain everything that happened this morning from his perspective. Listening carefully, Dahlia's eyes widened, with a shocked expression, that turned confused and then frustrated. "So, the main point for them to let us exist on Canir, is really to nurture superhumans or whatever they want to call it. And we live in a lower world at that. What does that even mean? To get to know that we are really only considered the other race's livestock is more frustrating than expected." Comprehending what Jason said, she added, "If they call Argos a lower world or planet, there must be more than one planet, with Argos being one of the worst. Can we even fight against other races?" Jason didn't know what to answer because he was also unsure of that, and it was unknown how strong the foreign races they knew really were. The only proven fact was that they could send sovereign ranks to the lower planet, without creating chaos in the defenses, which indicated their superiority compared to humanity's current powerhouses. Suddenly Dahlia jumped from the chair she sat on, as she remembered what Jason said. "Didn't you say that they eyed you weirdly as if they were greedy or something like that?" Nodding his head, he roughly understood what she was going to say. "Doesn't that indicate that your existence as assumed halfling is special? Are they normally unable to procreate with humans? What use could it have for them?" This was also what Jason asked himself, as he said the only plausible reason he could imagine. Maybe it's because of the soul awakening. At least this is what makes us humans special, right? Looking at Jason with shock, she exclaimed, "That has to be it. Your soul world is not only vast, but your soul energy also replenished much faster than everyone I know. As if that was not enough, you can form soul bond contracts with all or almost all affinities." Jason nodded his head lightly, feeling weird, even if he wasn't sure if that was really the truth. "Why can Dahlia accept me being a halfling from another race better than I?" This was the thought squirming in his mind because he was still not able to accept this fact. But understanding the reason for the other races to let humans survive and how valuable the information about Jason's existence as a halfling to the foreign races was, Dahlia went suddenly completely silent, as she mumbled to herself. "If other races figure this out, we may have to face an even bigger crisis than the last 300 years. The Shadow Walker race won't spread this information, right?" Not being able to answer this question, Jason could only remain silent, as Dahlia looked at him once again, forcing herself to smile lightly. "Let's change the subject. This is too heavy for now, don't you think so? Nodding his head, Jason assumed that Dahlia wanted to talk with him about the rough departure date his masters had to go in order to remain safe from the other big families. Pricking his ears, he hoped that the two of them would remain on Asterix as long as possible, but what Dahlia said immediately crushed his small hope into smithereens. I don't want to lie to you, Jason. Shane is extremely weak and it will most likely only take a few days for the Drake family and their reinforcement to arrive on Asterix. Because of Shane's injury, we can't use his spatial affinity, which would make everything less complicated. As such, the two of us decided to depart tomorrow. I'll take care of everything, but the sooner we go the better. Jason looked at Dahlia complicated because he could understand her reasoning on one side, while his selfishness didn't like this idea, as he subconsciously uttered, "What about me? And my teaching?" He was still only 14 years old, and even if he acted mature most of the time, there were still times he was unable to suppress his immaturity, which caused Dahlia to smile gently at him. "Haven't you heard old Drake and Shane talking before? I don't know if the Big Three tournament is still happening, but old Drake said that he'll send you to another island or even Canir, as an exchange student. That means it will take less than 2 months until we can see each other again, all right?" Turning serious, she added, "You can't always rely on us or others. It's impossible for us to be always there for you, and I doubt that you can't take care of yourself. The journey you experienced through the 4-star rift told me that you can. In the end, we are still there and we won't let you stay on Asterix just like that. We prepared more than enough tasks and there are still goodbye presents from us." Chapter 236, Completing the Unfinished by Hydesgrain. Chuckling lightly, Dahlia decided to wait for Jason's response, only to see his eyes gleaming brightly. "Presents are always welcome, huh?" she thought with a gentle smile, as she took out a small ring. "This is a spatial ring and it works similar to your storage device. The only difference is that you can bind it to your individual mana fluctuations to prevent others from using it. It's spacious and inside are all kinds of books for basic lifestyle occupations, beast creators, about Canir, the foreign races, and almost all books we retrieved from the Shaw clan which Shane annihilated. These books are compact in a single memory drive and you can insert it into your holographic transmitter. As for the remaining things inside, Shane prepared a present for you over the last few weeks which he initially wanted to give you once you forged your first mana weapon by yourself. The circumstances are unfortunate, but in the end, it was fortunate for Shane to prepare the gift." Handing Jason the ring, he inspected it, before putting the ring on his finger. Inserting the ring with his mana fluctuations, he saw how humongous space within was, as he noticed a small memory drive next to a large forge. "Is that a portable forge?" he exclaimed, looking at Dahlia, who returned his gaze slightly dejected. "Is that everything you see?" she said, and hearing this, he averted his attention back to the content within the spatial ring, as he noticed all necessary tools to brew, forge, and even rune inscribing, with beautiful inscriptions on an empty balpan. A radiating smile blossomed on his face when Dahlia continued, "Except for the lifestyle occupations, there is also a messenger crystal within the spatial ring that immediately connects you with us. The messenger crystal can only be used a few times, before crumbling. We have to leave everything behind, which includes our old quantum bracelets, and you will only be able to reach us through the crystal." Nodding his head, Jason turned more serious. After the joy subsided slightly, "So I should only message you if it's unavoidable." However, Dahlia didn't stop speaking, as she said, "Not only Shane prepared a gift, but I also prepared one. Over the last few weeks, I forced Shane to bother old Drake until to purchase a few ingredients, and I already finished the evolution solution for Scorpio, with a small extra, which will most likely make the two of you happy. You don't have to give me any star notes or similar valuables, just accept it, okay?" Jason felt warm around his heart once again, and hugged Dahlia for a short moment before he sincerely said, "Thank you." Shane was sleeping right now, otherwise, he would also thank him, because he didn't expect his masters to be so generous towards him, which was unexpected. In the end, he thought that masters would only teach the disciples without anything else, which however didn't seem to be the case. Don't thank me. This is what we are supposed to do as your teachers. Unfortunately, I can't help you out by unsealing your friend's Soulbond's lesser Minotaur bloodline, but I wrote down the exact prescription for you. In the end, it shouldn't be that difficult for you to make it, because unsealing a bloodline is one of the easiest tasks as a beast creator. Nodding his head that ached painfully because too many things happened over the whole day and the only thing he could do after such an arduous day was simply nodding. Because I'll leave with Shane as soon as possible, should we finish Scorpio's evolution now? Dahlia asked with interest gleaming in her eyes. She never evolved a miniature Parascore into a radiant sapphire scorpion, which was obvious, because such an evolution was simply illogical and irrational, solely because of the vast gap in strength. However, Scorpio, Jason's second soulbond, seemed to be extremely tough, and thanks to her increasing its potential forcefully, she involuntarily forced an evolution. In the end, it almost killed Jason, Scorpio, and herself, which was not something to brag about, but it worked out, which was everything that counted. Jason's rumbling head was immediately freed and enthusiasm overwhelmed his tiredness, as he jumped up to say, "Yes, please. Let's immediately finish Scorpio's evolution." Running down the spiral staircase, Jason left Dahlia alone, who looked after him with a smile. He is still young after all. Entering the hideout's underground, he had to predict which room they would use, and with his mana eyes fully utilized, he immediately went into the room to his right. The other rooms were either used for inscribing, brewing, forging, or enhancing a beast's potential. Looking around the room he entered, Jason saw a large mana circle on the ground that seemed essentially more complex than the mana isolation mana circle, causing his curiosity to ignite almost immediately. While waiting for Dahlia to arrive, Jason summoned both of his soulbonds. Artemis, who heard what Dahlia said about Scorpio's evolution, wanted to watch everything, while Scorpio was already expectant. Rushing towards the center of the complex mana circle, it stared at the closed door, waiting for Dahlia to arrive. With this sight, Jason began to chuckle, while Artemis also seemed to make a similar sound, which astonished him. Are my soulbonds becoming more human-like? Is that because of the fortified soulbond? Even if that was the case, it wasn't a bad sign, rather than that it might even lighten the tension he felt when he thought about his possible origin and the complexity of the world. Dahlia slowly entered the room, without hurrying much, when she noticed that Scorpio was already ready, waiting for her, with Jason standing in the corner while Artemis squeezed on his shoulder. The space on Jason's shoulder became less with each day passing, and Artemis seemed to have grown to a length of 1.2 meters, while her wingspan most likely reached more than 3.5 meters. Fortunately, she could adjust her size slightly, but for the moment, Jason didn't see any use in her doing so. As such, she stayed in her normal size. Dahlia smiled lightly, seeing that everyone was so expectant, as she approached Scorpio, while she took out a beaker that gleamed in an ocean blue color. To Jason, it looked like small stars twinkled inside the solution, while his eyes widened. The solution Dahlia prepared gleamed in a distinct green color, and Jason's expectations soared, as he remembered his master saying something about an extra she mixed in the solution. Filling the room with a sweet aroma, Scorpio was immediately drawn to the beaker in Dahlia's hand as he wanted to approach her. However, Dahlia instructed Scorpio to step back, as she pulled out a mountain of mana stones of all kinds of sizes. All of them are grade 3 mana stones. Jason noticed, slightly taken aback, as he noticed Dahlia taking out peculiar items. Thanks to his mana eyes, he immediately recognized them as ingredients with various poisonous attributes, which caused him to ponder for a moment. Seeing that Dahlia took out poison-attributed items, they had to be a necessity for Scorpio's evolution, and Jason followed suit as he took out all poison-transmuted elemental crystals he mined within the 4-star rift. Looking at Jason taking out a mountain of poison elemental crystals, her eyes widened, before she remembered that her disciple seemed to have told them that he mined elemental crystals in a cave. There were also poison elemental crystals. She wondered, inwardly praising Jason's luck, as she appeared in front of Scorpio, with the beaker still in her hand. Using her mana to envelope the evolution solution, it began to float out of the beaker, slowly approaching Scorpio, who greedily stared at the floating evolution solution. If Jason didn't force Scorpio with the thick fortified soul conjunction to remain still standing, he would have already jumped towards the floating liquid, as it slowly formed into a single large liquid ball in front of Scorpio. Indicating him to drink everything, Scorpio didn't hesitate for a single second, as he greedily gulped down everything, without leaving a single drop, before he returned to the center of the mana circle. Dahlia walked towards Jason, leaving the mana circle, which was immediately activated, as both Scorpio and Jason felt a searing heat ravaging through their body. Smiling weirdly, Jason finally figured out the first disadvantage of the fortified soul conjunction, sharing all Paran. Chapter 237 Soaring Strength by Hydesgrain. Thanks to the fortified soul conjunction between him and Scorpio, Jason could accept a majority of his soulbond's pain, while a small margin was immediately transferred towards him. The evolution solution was extremely potent, which was most likely not only because it was used to finish Scorpio's evolution, but also because Dahlia added a small extra, which probably caused it to have the green hue around it, only he could see. Feeling the searing pain Scorpio endured in order to fully change his genetic model and metamorphose into a different race, which is essentially superior to the initial Minotaur Parascore, Jason felt expectant. He was unaware how much of a change it would be, because he only witnessed an evolution from Artemis that was completely out of ordinary, and one could say that Scorpio's evolution was the first real evolution he witnessed. As such, he couldn't help but be anxious and expectant, which led him to transfer more than half of Scorpio's pain towards him. Gnashing his teeth, Artemis immediately noticed what Jason did, causing her to feel equally anxious, as she flew away from his shoulder to leave him some space. Scorpio meanwhile writhed in pain, throwing his body around, trying to end the unbearable pain, as Dahlia calmly instructed Jason. Tell Scorpio to circulate the mana through his veins. With that, the evolution solution will be faster digested and show its effects earlier. The whole evolution will take less time and the pain will lessen drastically. Even if Jason couldn't completely understand Dahlia, because the pain overwhelmed his senses, he understands Scorpio and mana circulation, and he immediately transmitted Scorpio what Dahlia said. Following Jason's instructions, Scorpio slowly began to circulate his mana through his body, while at the same absorbing the surrounding dense fog of mana that had traces of poisonous transmuted mana within them. Compared to the isolation and mana-gathering magic circles, the circle Scorpio stood within slowly dissolved the poison-attributed ingredients and grade 3 mana stones, which allowed everyone within to use their time in order to adjust to the slowly increasing dissolving rate. However, since Scorpio's potential increased to that of an unblemished beast, its previous lost ambition and determination, which was caused by the inability to become stronger, was ignited once again and stronger than ever before. Jason knew of that and smiled lightly while looking at Scorpio, with searing pain ravaging through his whole body, as he faintly said, "You can do it." Greedily absorbing the whole mana in his surroundings, he was slowly enveloped in a thick cocoon of mana, preventing anyone from the outside to peek at the evolution process. Time slowly passed and Jason noticed that the pain he had to endure lessened by a noticeable degree, as he sighed in relief. Somehow, he felt as if he had to go through too much pain in the last few months, which was extremely frustrating. The only good sign was that he was already numb to the pain caused by the Heaven's Hell technique, otherwise, he might have already gone insane. Unsure how much time passed, Jason only noticed that Dahlia placed a few dishes next to him, which he ate silently, without averting his attention from the white-greenish cocoon around Scorpio. Feeling that his soul bond became stronger with each second passing, Jason couldn't help but smile, And finally, after an eternity, the cocoon's mana was completely digested by Scorpio, whose outline could be seen from the outside. Even if Jason was already sure that Scorpio would change somehow, his eyes still widened unintentionally, as he asked himself if the scorpion in the center of the magic circle was really his small, cute Scorpio. Alone from the outlines, Scorpio's 80-centimeter long body enlarged manyfold, and it wouldn't wonder Jason if he was already 2 meters long, with an equal long tail and stinger. Gulping down his saliva, the cocoon was fully absorbed, with the magic circle deactivating by itself, as Jason rushed towards Scorpio in order to take a clear look at his newly evolved soul bond. The most shocking was not Scorpio's size, or the sapphire blue color shining on his new exoskeleton it built, but the green color radiating from his entire being, telling Jason that its potential increased to that of a magical ranked beast. What did Dalir mix into the evolution solution to further increase his potential? He wondered, as Scorpio slowly opened his eyes, allowing Jason to see radiant sapphire blue eyes. With his second soul bond evolving into a 2-meter-long scorpion, its bright, blue gleaming exoskeleton, razor-sharp claws, and its long stinger, that looked extremely perilous, Jason couldn't help but exclaim, "Whoa!" Suddenly, his soul world began to shake slightly, while his body began to tremble, which Jason tried to ignore because he was already aware of where this pain came from. After Scorpio finished its evolution, his strength increased by a large margin, and thanks to Jason's high soul world amplification, his soul energy, physique, and mana core were further enhanced. While ignoring the searing pain within his body and soul world, Jason inspected Scorpio in detail, while Artemis landed on its exoskeleton to greet him happily. Artemis and Scorpio definitely had a weird bond. On one side they were arch-enemies trying to attract Jason's attention, but on the other side, they were both his soul bonds and as such on the same side, which caused them to establish a genuine friendship with each other. Inspecting Scorpio's mana core, Jason immediately noticed that he already reached the mid-levels of the evolved rank, about to reach the higher levels, which was even higher than Artemis was. Dalir appeared next to Jason, and looking at Scorpio, she said, "Your soul bond is great. Not only did it absorb every single mana particle inside the mana circle, but also all varieties of poisonous attributed ingredients. If I'm not wrong, its poison will become extremely lethal once adjusted to its current race. If he established a poison affinity, Scorpio's poison might as well become even more lethal. Once it matures, you will have a really great companion by your side." Hearing Dalir saying so, Jason tried to feel the poison affinity Scorpio long since established as he began to smile lightly when he perceived that even Scorpio's poison affinity evolved, gleaming in a sick green-bluish color. Also mid-evolved. Jason wondered, and it was most likely similar to Artemis' case with both of them slowly adjusting their affinity to their rank, which was completely different to other beast younglings whose inherited affinity was immediately at their racial limits. But how could Jason complain as he already had 3 powerful soul bonds he contracted in only half a year after his soul awakening? If someone else were to know this, they would either label him as an idiot, wasting precious soul energy and space within his soul world, or as a genius. He was still unaware how late it was, but the pain he endured from Scorpio's amplification lessened, until it completely substituted, causing him to explore his own, newly advanced strength. What? Punching out with his fist, Jason felt that he was roughly as strong when Artemis occupied his mana core, which allowed him to reach the first expert rank. Is my physique already at the first expert rank? Jason wondered, taken aback, but considering that his amplification was, while Scorpio reached the mid-evolved rank with an extremely high endurance that was comparable to some high-evolved beasts, he couldn't help but smile. While Jason's physique already reached the first expert rank, his mana core size was infinitely close to breaking into the first expert rank, at the peak of the 9th adept rank. However, in the end, his mana core was barely at the 4th adept rank and the amplifications he received were too high to tell others that he only contracted 2 or rather 3 evolved beasts, while he had to label his Black Origin Flame as an evolved beast in case someone asked. Feeling his strength, Jason knew that he had to increase his mana core rank throughout the next few weeks, otherwise his strength would attract too much unwanted attention, while some may even question his soul world's size, unique effects, the amplification he received, and so on. For now, he wanted to avoid such a hassle, and trying to change his train of thoughts, he entered his soul world in order to take a look how high his soul energy increased. Knowing that Scorpio reached the mid-evolved rank, Jason already estimated his current soul energy units, but seeing them was completely different, with a vibrant smile emerging on his face. An increase of more than 70 units, huh? He thought, astonished, as soul energy reached 486 units, with Scorpio's demanded soul energy increasing to 300 units. In the end, Jason was glad that he prevented his Black Origin flame from annexing his soul energy, because now, he could barely fit Artemis and Scorpio within his soul, as he had only 16 soul energy units left, which he could use freely. Without knowing how fast both Artemis and Scorpio would mature, Jason could only apologetic look at his Black Origin flame, which was still banned from annexing a single soul energy unit. Chapter 238: Jason's Wealth by Hydesgrain. Initially, Dahlia and Shane wanted to leave Asterix as soon as possible, but both agreed that it was important to finish Scorpio's evolution first in order to look if something went wrong, which might temporary or even permanent damage either Scorpio or, in the worst case, Jason's soul world. As such, Dahlia finished everything cleanly, after collecting the valuable equipment within their hideout. Looking at Jason, who curiously inspected Scorpio's new evolution, with Artemis circling around them, she couldn't help but feel a little bit sad, as she cleared her throat to announce, "Congratulations on Scorpio's evolution to a Radiant Sapphire Scorpion." Hearing Dahlia congratulating him, Jason looked up, only to see her somewhat sad expression, which caused him to understand the situation almost immediately. Standing up, he hesitantly asked, "It's time for the two of you to depart, right?" Which she answered with a simple nod. "Initially we wanted to depart earlier, but we thought that completing Scorpio's evolution was equally important, and now it's already Sunday morning. We should depart now, as old Drake's reinforcement should arrive soon." Jason could only nod, without trying to cover his sadness, as he gave her a firm hug, to which she responded by hugging him too. In the end, Shane and Dahlia were both important to him, and they taught and gifted him a lot, allowing him to become stronger at an extremely fast pace. Furthermore, the two of them were extremely nice to him, without trying to exploit his ability by forcing him to sign a soul contract or something like that, as they genuinely tried to strengthen him, even if they had their own reason to do so. Making him mankind's pillar to unite them was their initial plan, but neither Shane nor Dahlia could have ever imagined that they would be so attached to Jason, in such a short period at that. As such, parting ways was not that easy, but there was not much the three of them could do, as Dahlia led Jason outside the hideout through a secret path so that he didn't have to swim against the water current. Jason's soul bonds were both already back inside his soul world, and he continued to test his strength, only for him to notice that his current physique was already on par with Vanguard's main school without him having to utilize his fortified soul conjunction at all. Smiling brightly, Jason felt extremely satisfied with the achievements over the last 6 months, and it felt like his journey had just begun. Leaving the secret path, Dahlia stayed behind, waving him, while Jason felt melancholic because he was able to reach his current height not only due to his own strength but also thanks to Till, and his two masters Shane and Dahlia. Without them, he would never have obtained his Black Origin flame, and even less the fortune to increase Scorpio's potential. Scorpio would most likely still be at the lower awakened stage, with Jason searching for treasures that allowed humans and beasts to cleanse their mana cores from impurities. Both Scorpio and Artemis had now complete mana cores, which meant that they were officially able to enter the magical rank, and Jason couldn't be more satisfied with this result, as he utilized his weightless steps movement technique in order to figure out how fast he currently was. Without having to use Artemis to reach a physique at the first expert rank, Jason was forced to slowly adjust to the strength he obtained, while smiling brightly on his way through the destroyed city. It was Sunday, early in the morning, but he could still see many people removing the rubble all over the city, while some smaller building complexes seemed to be under repair. The government seemed to work faster than Jason initially expected, and if they continued to work at this pace, without wasting too much time, he wondered how long it would take to completely repair and reconstruct Syro City. Probably before the Big 3 tournament will begin, huh? Wait. Will the Big 3 tournament even happen? Wondering about this, Jason began to doubt that the government will do anything to stop the Big 3 tournament from taking place. In the end, it would differ the attention from the recent accidents within Syro City towards the younger generation's tournament, which was definitely something the government would support. As such, Jason didn't think too much about it, until he arrived at the Flay's small house slightly less than 90 minutes later. It was still early and he doubted that any of the Flays would be awake, as he entered the house, only to see that everyone was awake, eating or reading something. Seeing Jason, they greeted him heartily, to which he responded with a bright smile, as he asked everyone why they were already awake because it was not common for all of them to be together at such early hours. But hearing that the recent incidents caused the Flays to work harder in order to strengthen themselves, because they didn't want to rely too much on the government and others, astonished him, even if he acknowledged their thoughts. Previously, Gabriella and Mark were rather lazy with their mana absorption, but apparently, that would change now, as Greg rushed towards him impatiently. Jason. Is the mysterious beast creator still there? If that's the case, how long? It will take some time to procure all ingredients for Taurus evolution because they're extremely expensive. However, the beast creator you know is the only one that might be able to help me in the next few months. The secretary from Asterix's beast creator declined our issue. Greg was visibly desperate and frustrated, which was understandable, because his soul bond had high potential, yet it was useless if the reinforced Horned Bull's bloodline remained sealed. Listening to what Greg said, he smiled lightly, thinking, the mysterious beast creator is probably already far away, but I'm still there. Clearing his thought, Jason thought for a moment what to answer before he simply said. According to what the mysterious beast creator said, he will remain on Asterix until the Big 3 tournament finishes, at least if it takes place. I don't know more than that, but can you even gather the ingredients until then? In the end, he could only create the evolution or rather unsealing solution for Taurus, as long as he was on Asterix because it would be relatively difficult for him to make the solution and send it over a long distance. This was solely the case because such solutions would go bad extremely fast, with them losing more of their magical effect with each day passing. Hearing that there were at most 2 months left in order to accumulate enough wealth and procure the required ingredients, the expression of all Flays soured immediately. If everything went well, they could accumulate enough wealth at this time, but purchasing all items in this period would take at least another month, which was too long. Noticing their sour mood, Jason pondered for a moment, before he looked at Greg seriously, saying, if you need funds, I can give you enough to purchase the required ingredients. Hearing this, Greg and the others furrowed their brows, wondering where Jason would get so many star notes from. Only Malia's expression didn't change, because she roughly understood that Jason shouldn't be as poor as he was 6 months ago when they first meet, because he wore extremely expensive equipment when they entered the 4-star rift. Noticing Greg and the Flay parents' suspicion, he used the same excuse as before once again. I accepted the beast creator as my master and he gave me some pocket money. It should be more than enough to purchase all ingredients for the evolution solution. Smiling brightly, everyone looked at him weirdly, wondering what exactly was going on in Jason's head, as Greg sighed deeply, asking him uncertainly and hesitantly. Is it really fine with you to lend me so many star notes? Jason didn't say anything and only nodded his head, while he maintained his bright smile, causing Greg to smile lightly, as he thanked him. Chapter 239 Drake Family Patriarch by Hydesgrain. The Flays were overjoyed about Jason's offer, and only Greg seemed to hesitate because he didn't want to exploit his best friend. Yet, Jason didn't hesitate, as he tried to find a compromise. If you feel uncomfortable, you can just pay me back later. You can take it as a loan, but it doesn't really matter. In the end, he felt extremely thankful to the Flays because they brought him to Syro City, which was one of the most important decisions he could ever take. Otherwise, he might still be with the unevolved Artemis in Artes City, where he grew up. As such, he felt more comfortable in thanking the Flays sincerely and giving them enough funds to purchase the required ingredients to concoct the evolution solution for the reinforced horned bulls, Taurus. How many star notes do you need? Jason asked, without waiting for Greg to accept his compromise. Greg was still baffled and looked blankly at him, without answering, as Mark glanced at Jason with a light smile, saying, "We still lack around 300 star notes to purchase everything. Are you sure that you want to lend us such a large sum? Don't you have to go soon, if you accepted the mysterious beast creator as your master?" Noticing that even Mark, who was initially extremely greedy, acted so carefully around such a large amount of money, Jason couldn't help but look weirdly at all of them. "It will help Greg to become stronger, right? And I already said that there is no need in paying me back. If you all are really so adamant in repaying me then," pondering for a moment, a sudden idea popped up in his head. Smiling brightly, Jason turned towards Greg as he said, "If you really want to repay me, you just have to enter a high ranking in the Big 3 tournament, if it takes place. I'm pretty sure that my master wants me to apply in order to see my combat prowess. As such, I will probably stay until it finishes. To pay me back, you just have to either win a reward or gather enough funds until I depart. You don't seem extremely confident in achieving the latter, as such do the first. Do you think you can handle it?" Hearing what Jason said, Greg furrowed his brows, until a sudden thought emerged, as he mumbled, "If Taurus unseals his hidden bloodline before the tournament starts, I'm sure that I can control the Berserk ability better. Furthermore, I will become much stronger through my soul world's amplification, right?" Listening to Greg's mumbling, Jason smiled because it was exactly what he thought. Taurus evolution would be somewhat different to Artemis and Scorpio's because his two soul bonds were initially wild-ranked beasts without an extraordinary high endurance and sturdy body constitution, which caused them to have a slower maturing process after their evolution. In the end, they also had to adjust to their sudden increase of strength, slowly over time, without being able to mature as fast as other beasts that had a high racial limit since they were born. However, Taurus already reached the mid-evolved stage and would most likely enter the low unblemished rank, once it unsealed its hidden bloodline in addition to enough mana stones to supply the evolution into a lesser Minotaur. Malia was now also smiling when she noticed how crafty Jason's plan was. If Greg wanted to pay him back, he had to enter the top ranks at the Big 3 tournament, and to be able to accomplish this feat, Greg would be forced to become stronger in the shortest amount of time. Not only would his soul bond have to evolve and unleash its complete hidden bloodline, but Greg would have to break through at least one rank, at the best even two, which was only possible with enough mana stones, provided nutrition. Even if Greg was already close to the 7th Adept rank, it would be difficult to break into the 7th Adept rank straight into the 8th within slightly more than a single month. Looking into Jason's eyes, they seemed to gleam brightly, and Malia began to wonder how far he wanted to bring her brother. Averting her gaze, she suddenly noticed Greg's eyes flickering in determination as his gaze turned firm, which Malia never saw before. Even Mark and Gabriella were astonished about Greg's sudden change in demeanor, as he spread a sudden energetic aura when he approached Jason, who continued to smile at him. Holding out his hand, Greg announced proudly, "I promise you that I will enter the ranking within the Big 3 tournament and pay you back." Gazing at Greg's large hand, Jason held out his own hand, shaking Greg's. With this, Jason immediately knew that he would have another strong competitor for the Big 3 tournament, which made him happy. Maybe Seren will also surprise me, Jason thought, thinking about his classmate and friend who should be weaker than him, considering that they were already equally strong, before Scorpio's evolution finished. Loosening the grip, he immediately entered his storage device, as he took out 320 star notes, saying, use these 20 extra star notes to purchase cultivation resources and mana stones for Taurus evolution. You two will definitely need them. Even if Jason still had some mana stones left, he wanted to use them for himself. As such, giving Greg more star notes would most likely motivate him even further to become stronger in order to reach a better ranking in the tournament. Because he came back, while the Flays were having breakfast, everything turned chaotic, but after a few minutes to calm down, the 5 of them sat around the table to eat breakfast. It had been long for Jason to eat breakfast with all Flay family members, and it was tranquil and peaceful, even though the whole city was still devastated with tens of thousands of citizens complaining about how stupid the government acted. Even if someone didn't adore the government, one could say that the arrival of the foreign race envoys was something humanity couldn't fight against, without them being able to truly fight against, even if they wanted to. Jason was also aware that the Shadow Walker he saw was able to annihilate mankind if he wanted to, while others only thought he might be at the peak sovereign rank. Sighing deeply, he wasn't sure what to think about such humans, as he remembered Shane and Dahlia telling him to be a support pillar for humanity. Why should I do something like this if everyone were to behave like that? What do they expect me to do? By the looks of it, humans accept everything as long as they can live relatively peacefully, while they start complaining once a single big incident happens. Meanwhile, minor incidents are either completely ignored or pushed away, as long as it doesn't have anything to do with them. After figuring out that he might only be a human halfling, Jason began to question their behavior deeper. The biggest contrast he noticed was that he hated it to be controlled, while most humans seem to like living like this. In the end, this was most likely only his personality and nothing specific from his ancestry, but it was still frustrating. After they finished breakfast, the remaining Sunday was rather unspectacular, with Jason transferring his belongings to his spatial ring, which had a slightly faster response and interaction interval compared to his storage device. Other than that, he took a look at the memory drive he received from his masters, only for him to find out that inside were also a massive number of martial art techniques, ranging from Tier 1 to Tier 3, with unique and special skills, while he even noticed 2 blessed skills within. Blessed skills were the most powerful skills humanity ever found, and only the powerful families and clans had such skills, which the most likely found in ancient ruins within rifts. At least, that was what everyone said when the question of the origin of these techniques came up. Practicing the Heaven's Hell technique 3 times, his soul world shook lightly, increasing in size as Jason noticed that he broke through 500 soul energy units, which caused him to feel overjoyed. Waking up the next day, Jason was shocked to hear from the news that the Drake family's patriarch arrived on Asterix with other powerhouses following him, to calm down the civilians and at the same time to prevent the worst-case scenario once the Ganassia and Deep-Sea Scion race would take back the envoys' corpses. But Jason's train of thoughts was completely different, because the only thing he could do right now was to sigh in relief, as he thought out his masters. Fortunately, Dahlia and Shane left yesterday. Chapter 240 They Can't See Me. By Hydesgrain. While the Flays didn't seem to care about the appearance of the Drake family patriarch, because they were occupied with searching for the necessary ingredients in order to concoct the evolution solution, Jason was curious about the patriarch's strength and if he was stronger than Shane. Furthermore, he also wanted to know how strong the group following the patriarch was. However, that wouldn't mean that Jason wanted to rush mindlessly towards old Drake in order to satiate his curiosity. There were too many uncertain factors he had to calculate, and in the end, it was useless to figure it out. What was the use of him knowing if Shane or the Drake family patriarch was stronger? Shane was not here, and even seriously injured, and there was no way for him to do anything if something were to happen. As such, Jason decided to mind his own business. Taking out a bunch of mana stones within his small room, he absorbed and refined the mana within, only to stop in order to practice the Heaven's Hell technique, as another day passed. It was Tuesday, but there was still no news from school, when it would start again or what exactly would happen to the Big 3 tournament, which didn't really interest Jason. In a few hours the sun would rise, as Jason took out a few high nutrition dishes, he purchased in a bulk online, only to store them within the preservation segment inside his storage device. Without the mandatory special combat class lessons, Jason was pondering how he should schedule his time and the most important factor that he should improve, for now, his concoction proficiency and beast creator knowledge. How should he concoct the beast unsealing evolution solution for Taurus, if he made only 2 potions until now, while one of them was an inscribing solution? It would be embarrassing if he were to lend Greg a huge number of funds, only to damage or destroy them by testing out how to concoct the correct solution. Without being confident about the whole process, Jason wouldn't dare to start concocting Greg's potion, and as such he would have to practice a lot. Changing his previous morning blacksmithing period with an alchemy and concocting lesson, everything should work out perfectly and it wouldn't even hinder his practice with the Black Origin flame. Rather than that, he would have to be even more careful with his flame's heat while concocting because the temperature range was extremely small if he didn't want to destroy or lessen the herb's efficiency. Because it was still early in the morning, Jason couldn't start immediately because he didn't want to wake up everyone. However, with the high nutrition dishes already in front of him, he wanted to test out his current strength with both of his soul bonds occupying his mana core, one after another. Practicing extracting and retracting foreign body parts was extremely difficult and practice was what he needed the most in order to increase his proficiency and speed to envelop himself with a blue shining exoskeleton or manifesting a long blue stinger out of his coccyx. After Scorpio finished his evolution, it became more difficult to control everything smoothly, with the biggest reason for it being the large amplification he received. After his physique was strengthened, Jason's endurance increased consistently and he was now able to increase his strength to the 4th expert rank with a soul bond occupying his mana core. However, with Scorpio occupying his mana core, he was already able to reach the 6th expert rank, which was not something he could handle for now. As such, Jason was forced to do the exact same as he did with Artemis before. Restricting the amplification, which would also suppress the perfect fusion. Jason only noticed this by chance, as he perceived the vast difference when Artemis occupied his mana core. His physique and mana core size were amplified to the 3rd expert rank, without the need to suppress anything, and it was much easier for both Jason and Artemis to manifest Artemis wings on his back, within several moments. The connection between them was not capped or suppressed at all, and with this information, Jason had to change his overall plans slightly. Increasing his mana core rank became an even more important goal. He had to prioritize. When everyone was up, they ate together and Jason was about to tell the Flays that he wanted to build a small space to learn alchemy as the mysterious beast creator advised him, when he received a call. It was Tilland answering the call. Jason figured out that the Drake Patriarch and his small group wanted to meet him in order to figure out more information about the incident with the foreign races. In order to calm down Jason, who already began to worry, Till explained that Max and Seren were also there. Apparently, the Drake family patriarch already figured out about Shane's existence, who was not very pleased to hear that a Shane hid on Asterix. However, because Shane saved Syro City from total devastation, he wouldn't further investigate it, according to Till's intel. In the end, that was only what he said, and without a soul contract, preventing anyone from lying about certain subjects, nobody could be sure about the exact truth because lying was something humans were proficient in. After hearing what the Drake family patriarch said, Jason felt that it was suspicious, but if he were to reject the patriarch's invitation, it would only be even more suspicious, which he wanted to prevent in any way. It was already weird for a nobody like him to be next to Seren and Max, who were protected by Shane, Dahlia, until at the same time, as they were the most powerful beings on Asterix Island at that time. Without wanting to be suspicious or attract unwanted attention, Jason could only helplessly accept the invitation, until told him that he would come over soon to bring him to the Patriarch. What a hassle, Jason thought, inwardly frowning lightly while trying to remember what exactly happened at that time and what to say, if weird, personal questions were to come up. Explaining the Flays the rough situation, they could only nod, as Jason walked out of the house, only to see Till diving towards him, as his wings flapped vigorously. Greeting each other, Till picked him up, as they ascended into the sky. Looking around, Jason felt that he should try flying around with Artemis wings manifested. At least in the future, without anyone being able to bother him about how it was possible for a 14-year-old youth to have established a fortified soul conjunction. Considering that he could already utilize her complete strength as a fortified soul conjunction inside his mana core, it should be possible for him to fly, or at least hover for a short time. Inside his own world, Jason couldn't even hear what Till said, and only when he heard something particular, he involuntarily trembled as he shouted out. "What did you say?" Trying to overwhelm the wind pressure with his voice, while his body continued to shiver, without him being able to stop. Till looked down towards him as he repeated the exact same words again, as Jason's eyes widened, as he tried his best to meander out of Till's grasp, with a deep sensation of fear igniting within him. "Let me go!" Jason shouted out loud, confusing Till even more, as he slowed down his pace, to look more clearly at Jason, who still tried to get out of his firm grasp. "What is wrong with you? I just told you that the Ganassia and Deep Sea Scion race will most likely arrive today in order to take back the Brethren's corpses. It's not like they will attack the city again. Don't you know that they are extremely conservative and traditional with the deceased? There were already several similar incidents and the foreign races never attacked us when they came to get the corpses." Jason's eyes suddenly began to shine brightly, calming him down to a certain degree, which didn't mean that the fear within him extinguished as he blurted out. "They can't see me. Otherwise, Syro City might as well be destroyed." Of course, he couldn't be sure of this assumption, but in the end, the Shadow Walker was firm in his action to kill the other envoys in order to prevent anyone from figuring out Jason's existence. As such, it might as well be possible that the Ganassia and Deep Sea Scion would do the same once they saw him, which would mean that they would try to kill each other in order to prevent the other party from leaking the secret. But Jason's fear came more from the possibility that these two races ignored the danger, which held back the Shadow Walker from abducting him, causing them to abduct him in order to experiment with him. Everything was possible, and either of the possibilities was extremely bad, causing him to try everything to writhe out of Till's grasp. Till, meanwhile, was still extremely confused, but seeing his desperate attempt to escape only to prevent the foreign races from seeing him, even if they were currently high in the sky, which would mean the youth's death, made him realize the seriousness of Jason's words.